how to be a disciple of Jesus Christ. We want to learn how to be a disciple, because there's a big difference between being a disciple and being a religious person. And we want to go deeper than just having a religion or having a tradition that we go to church on a Sunday. We want to get real. We want to be the real deal. Because every single one of us is going to check out of this world one of these days. Every single one of you. There's no way out. No one gets out of this alive unless the Master calls for us, and then history is over. So between now and then, we want to make sure that our lives are not only reflecting Him and growing into Him, but are rewarded in the end. Because too many of us, our entire culture is narcissistic. It's all self-centered. It's how can I ingratiate and get my little nerve cells to tingle. That's all I care about until the end. And there will be so many people on the other side of death. Some of them will cry out and say, Lord, Lord, didn't we go to church? Didn't we do these things? Didn't we do these things and that then? And Jesus is going to say, I never knew you. Depart from me. And the word knew that he's using there is an intimate connection. Same kind of thing when I say I know my wife. It's an intimacy. And he's saying, I never had this intimate relationship with you. It was a religion to you. I don't know you. We got to go deeper. We got to go a lot deeper. And that's what this sermon series is about. And we get up to this section where we're talking about money because we all have to deal with it. And nobody likes to talk about it, particularly because we don't have enough of it, we think. Or because somebody's trying to get it from us. And it's got a hold on us. Kind of reminds me of a story about a newspaper reporter. And this newspaper reporter got a chance to interview the devil. And sat down with the devil across the table and said, come on, devil, you got to tell me, what is the most evil, destructive thing that you've done? What are you most proud of in your devious way of being proud? And the devil didn't want to answer. The devil said, well, there's lots of destruction and death and misery, and nothing really stands out. I have a lot of things I could be proud of. I've done all kinds of evil things. So the reporter kept pressing him and saying, come on, Satan, you got to tell me, what's the one thing you're most proud of? And the devil thought about it for a minute, and his eyes lit up, and he twitched his little tail and pulled out that pitchfork, and he said, well, honestly, if I had to pick one evil deed that I'm most proud of, it's, a few years ago, I invented credit cards. Debt in America, debt among people who call themselves Christians, debt among those of us who are trying to be disciples is absolutely out of control. It is out of control in this culture. Analysts in America call it a credit crisis in America today. And that really betrays American thinking, doesn't it? It's not a credit crisis. Because when they say it's a credit crisis, what they mean is people can't get enough credit to survive. That's what they're thinking. But it's not a credit crisis, guys. It's a debt crisis. There's too much debt. There is way too much debt. But you see, our culture sees debt as a necessity. We see it as just how you do business. That's how you survive. I know this. I'm a businessman. And as a businessman owning a small business, the first thing I do when I go into a couple years ago when I restarted Canadian Lager and I went down to get my bank account, the first thing they offer me is a credit card, because after all, you can't start and run a business without credit. And they were amazed that I did not want to fill out the forms for a credit card. Well, how can you do business without a credit card? Mr. Marks, it doesn't make any sense to us. Because our whole culture says you can't start, you can't run a business without credit. You can't own a car without a car payment. Everybody has car payments. We all know that. And you're always going to have them until you die. See, the implication there is that we're going to keep you in slavery to us forever. The implication is the banks and the credit card companies, they have one goal, to make you their slave till death. And then when you die, they're going to go after your assets so that the people that are supposed to inherit from you, they're not going to get it either. No, the credit card companies are going to get it. And if you think I'm making them out to be evil, I am. They are. Now, there are people that work for credit card companies that are not evil. Misguided, not evil. Because our whole culture says you can't even go on a vacation without your visa, right? You can't go anywhere, can't do anything. But you know what? If you can't even go on a vacation without borrowing money, because that's what credit is, it's just borrowing money, well, then you've got a problem. Now, we're supposed to be trying to be disciples of Jesus. And Romans 12:1 says, we're not supposed to conform to the pattern of this world. The pattern of this world is you live in debt all the time. That's the pattern of this world. No. We're going to be transformed. How are we going to be transformed? By renewing our mind. We're going to change our thinking. And that's the challenge that I want to give you today. I want to challenge the lie that you need to live with debt, that you need to use credit to survive. I want to challenge that lie. I want to help you think differently. I want you as disciples to be free from the burden of debt that everybody in this culture says you must have. In fact, I think that as a disciple of Jesus Christ, you should strive for and learn to live a 100% debt-free lifestyle until your last breath. That's what I think. I really believe this, and I'm trying to live it in my own personal life, and I want to reassure you. I have told you once, I've told you 100 times, the Lord never lets me preach a message I don't have to live first. I've been in debt. I know the crushing pressure of we are not going to make the payments. I know what it's like to fear that the next phone call is going to be somebody harassing me. I know I don't even want to go check the mail because I already know what's in there and I don't want to read it because it's depressing. I know the fear, and I want you to be free from it because I also know what it's like to be set free without having to go bankrupt. And that's what I want to show you today. I want to reassure you. I want to encourage you. I don't want to condemn anybody if you've gotten yourself up to your eyeballs. Most people in America have. At least 90% of the people in America have a debt problem. That's a lot. And that would be 9 out of 10 of you. Let's renew our thinking. Let's do something different. Let's be set free from this. Let's be disciples. How in the world can we be the people that go help the poor when we're poor? How can we go help feed the hungry when we're one paycheck away from not being able to feed our own kids? How can we fulfill what Christ has called us to do if we're slaves to debt? We can't. This is why you cannot serve two masters. You can't. That's pretty heavy, but we need to renew our thinking. Why? Listen to me. We've talked about connect, to grow, to do, and I hope those words get burned into you. We as disciples are trying to go to a deeper level in our lives, in our attitudes, in our mentalities. What we want is we want to connect with our master. We want to connect with him in a deep and powerful and real way so that we are gaining from him the spiritual strength to walk in his ways. If we could do this without him, wouldn't we? But we can't. We must connect at a deep and a humble level in order to get the strength, in order to grow. To grow, change, be different. To live a life that is different. To be the light of the world. To be the salt of the earth. In order to grow so that we can do. What is a disciple? A disciple is an apprentice. What's an apprentice? An apprentice is someone who follows a master, watches him, listens, pays attention, does what the master tells him to do in order to grow, to eventually do what the master does. Jesus has a goal for you. He wants you to look like him, think like him, and act like him. And you can't do that if you continue to walk in the ways of this world. Now, last week, we started with this issue, and we said, you must learn to take control of your finances. And I gave you an assignment, and I gave you a little sheet of paper, and I said, you're coming up to the first of the month. Here's your chance to change and start and do something new. The first thing you need to do is you need to know what you have, and then you need to figure out what you need. Not what you want, what you need. And then you need to set aside in categories what it is that you need. That way you're not flying by the seat of your pants all the time. That's what we talked about last time. And the reason it's so important, some of you look at me and you go, why are you teaching on this right now? It seems like you talk about money a lot. Jesus spoke more about money than he did about hell, because he knows how much it can mess you up. He knows. He talked more about this than hell. That's important. But you know what he said? He said, if you're untrustworthy with worldly wealth, if you can't figure this out, if you can't take control of this, who's going to trust you with the riches of heaven? There's so many people that think, oh, God, bless me, bless me, bless me. And God says, would you obey? Would you start walking in integrity and doing things the way I tell you to? Because as soon as you do that, then I'll bless you. People are looking for a windfall from God. It doesn't work that way. You've got to humble yourself and start doing things his way. Or how is he going to trust you with something that's really valuable? Really valuable. See, the problem is, listen, guys, this is what I want. This is the thesis of what we're talking about today. I want to break the brainwashing that you have been given your whole life in this culture, that you have to have credit cards, that you have to live in debt. You were trained so well that you couldn't wait, if you're honest, when you were old enough to get your first credit card. You arrived, and the banks were giving you congratulations. Here's your first credit card. Aren't you excited? You got a $500 limit. And you're like, I've arrived. No, you haven't. You just got bought. The shackles just got put on you. You are now a slave to that company. Absolutely the truth. And we have got to break that brainwashing. You've been taught that credit is good, that it's the way to be prosperous, that it's easy money, that it's sophisticated, financially sophisticated. You know, rich people have gold cards. Yes, they do, with zero balances. They're very smart. That's why they're rich and you're not. They don't live on credit. It's the truth. And you know what? This marketing, I want to take the veil off your eyes. Credit card companies spent $600 billion last year marketing to you. Just marketing. Just telling you what's in your wallet. If you're sophisticated, you have this card, right? $600 billion? Why would they spend $600 billion just marketing to you? Because it's worth their investment. Because they're going to get a whole lot more than $600 billion back, and they know it. You see, 74% of American households, that's 3 out of 4, have at least, on average, 7 credit cards plus 13 other debt obligations, which equals 25% of their monthly paycheck goes just to debt, not counting the mortgage payment. You add the mortgage payment, and you are somewhere between 50 and 70% of your paycheck is just debt. That's it. You are going nowhere. 80% of us are one paycheck away from total financial disaster. We must change this if we're going to be the light of the world. I was talking to a friend of mine who has a big church here in town, and they go out and they do some wonderful things for the community. And they will spend $50,000 in a month going out and feeding people or putting clothes on their back. I would like this church to be able to do that. But it took years for them to get to that level, because when he took over that church, they were almost $1 million a month in the red. That's how far they had fallen. It took a long time to fix that. Are you with me? And why? And I talked to him about it. Why is it that? He says, because most of my people are so in debt they can't give. All they do is tip. They'll drop $20 in every once in a while. We can't go do anything effective for the kingdom of God until people get a hold of this. We got to teach this stuff. We got to grow vertically before we can grow horizontally. And, we've got to learn this stuff. All of us do. When you've got statistics like 80%, look, this is the key. Your culture tells you you can't survive without debt. But if you're a disciple, you got to renew your mind and become committed to living without it. This needs to become your lifestyle. From this moment until you die, you become committed. I don't live in debt. I don't use it at all. I don't have credit cards. I don't go there. I don't need them because I'm disciplined. That's what a disciple is. And I live within my means, and I have savings, and I'm able to do things, and I don't have to live under that crushing pressure. I'm not a slave anymore, because you can't serve two masters. You can't. In fact, let's take a look at an example of this from the Word. Go to 2 Kings. Why is that up there? I'm looking for my next verse. Thank you. There we go, 2 Kings, chapter 4, verse 1. Now it says there was a wife of a man from the company of the prophets. Now the company of the prophets means it would be like my wife. It would be somebody's wife who had been involved in the ministry all of his life. Can you picture that? That would be like Melissa. And it says, your servant, she goes to Elisha the prophet, and she says, your servant, my husband, is dead. And you know that he revered, that is, he feared the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my two boys as slaves. The man has died. There was no life insurance in those days. And his creditor is coming to take her children as slaves to pay off a debt. In verse 1, here's the first concept you need to own, disciple. You need to walk out of here and say, I believe this. I'm going to choose to believe this. That debt is slavery. It just is. There's a modern myth out there that you have good debt and bad debt. The Bible teaches all debt is bad debt. All of it. It is slavery. It is absolutely slavery. And the Bible says the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is servant. That is slave to the lender. And it's absolutely the truth. Because as soon as you borrow money from someone, you owe them, and you owe them at interest. And if you don't pay, they come and take things from you. They will take your freedom. They will take your time. They will take your psychological sense of peace. They will own you. They will harass you. And if you think, well, I can keep up the debt, can you? Even if you can, who are you serving? Who are you working for? Not the Lord. Are you with me? This is extremely important. And some people look at this and they go, well, what about buying a house? What about a mortgage? Isn't that debt too? Well, yes, it is. And what would be best is if all of us were disciplined enough to save up and go out and buy that house cash. I know some people who have. Oh, yes, I know some people who saved and saved and saved and went out and bought a home cash. Wouldn't that be nice? Now, most of us can't save several $100,000. We're not disciplined enough. And, oh, by the way, you make enough, but we're not disciplined enough to do that. Not a chance. You have $50,000 in the bank, you go, ha, 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 ha. Instead of going, no, that's not enough to buy my house yet. But let's say you do. You get into a mortgage. You buy a home. I've bought a home. I've had a mortgage. I understand what that is, but there is a difference, and I'll tell you what that is. Real estate is called real estate because it's real. That means that it's tangible. It's a life necessity, and if you get into trouble, you can sell it. It has value. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit different. And even Dave Ramsey will tell you, yes, you can go ahead and use a mortgage to buy a home, but you need to buy a home within your means. You may have enough credit to buy $1 million home, but should you? No, you buy what you need, not what you want, what you need. Live within your means. And if you do, you pay that home off. I know a man who bought a home and paid it off in 17 years flat. By the time he was 49, he had paid for that home free and clear. So he spent the next 20 years just getting ready for retirement. And he lives right now like nobody else. Going on cruises, having a good time. Why? Because he spent 20 years being debt-free, not even having to pay on a mortgage. You put all that money into savings and into mutual funds and things like that. So now he's in a place where he's free. And this is a man who's gone to more than 38 countries as a short-term missionary. Why? Because he can afford to. Make sense? He can afford to. He's not a slave to debt. So mortgages are a little bit different. And here in 2 Kings, they're not foreclosing on property, are they? They're going, you owed money. I'm coming to take your children as slaves. In other words, this is a credit debt. And that's what most debt is today. It has no value. You've used your credit cards to buy gas or groceries. You consumed that. There's nothing to show for it. So they're going to come, what are they going to repossess? Your tummy? No, they're only going to steal your freedom. And yes, it's usury when they're charging you 28% interest compounded daily, but you signed. You agreed. You agreed to let them put you in that slavery if you did not repay. And when there's no property to sell, the only thing you can sell is your freedom. And that's the thing we need to understand right off the bat, that using unsecured debt is a road to slavery. Are you with me? It's a road to slavery and poverty. So what do you need to do? You need to make up your mind as a disciple, I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to do everything I can to pay off that debt, and I'm going to avoid doing that in the future. I'm going to be committed to it. That means I got to connect to God in order to get the strength to do this, because my whole culture is screaming at me every day, every advertisement I see, buy, 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 buy. And we'll give you no interest for a year for that. And we so easily walk into another slavery because we got to have that couch. No, you don't. You may learn to restrain. What is one of the fruits of the Spirit? What do we call self-control? How about patience? You see, learning to live within your means and not be in debt, it's walking in the Spirit, friend. It's walking in the Spirit. That's what it is. I just listed 2 of the fruit of the Spirit that you can utilize to not go there. Now, Jesus taught about this. Remember, I told you, he taught more about money and possessions and things than he did about hell. In fact, the apex of his teaching to his disciples about what it means to be a disciple, we call it the Sermon on the Mount. And you can find it in the book of Matthew, chapter 6. And in that chapter, verse 1, he talks about you need to be a giver. Jesus said that. And when you give with the right heart. Don't do it to show off or anything else, but you need to be a giver. And you need to be a prayer. He talks about prayer, and he goes into it. He even gives an example. We call it the Lord's Prayer. And then you get to this verse. Don't lay up for yourself treasures on earth. This is Jesus speaking. Where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. See, most of us, we're laying up for ourselves treasures on earth. But lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your heart follows your money. It does. And if you are in slavery to debt, then your heart is in slavery, not in freedom. And you cannot do what the Lord wants you to do. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, your whole body is full of light. What does he mean? If we're constantly looking at the ad going, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, our eyes are filled with what? Covetousness, greed, and me, 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 me. And he says if your eye is filled like that, your whole body, your whole self is, this is extreme. If your eye is bad, your whole body's full of darkness. Okay? If, therefore, the light that is in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? He is talking about your attitude towards money. no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And that word mammon means all, not just money, it means possessions, covetousness, greed, stuffitis, which most of us are afflicted with. We are mostly afflicted with this disease. Now, he says you can't serve two masters. What does he mean? Listen carefully. He's saying you must make your financial picture serve you, or else you will serve your financial need. Let me say that again. You must learn to get your finances to serve you, or else you will serve your finances. And it's a fact. Because when you get down financially, what do? You work extra hours. Those aren't extra hours serving here at the church. Those aren't extra hours reading your Bible. Those are not extra hours doing anything but serving a master called debt. He owns you. You work the extra time. You do all these things. Why? Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to do that, but you could serve here extra? Isn't that what the Lord wants from us? But we can't. Because after we've worked our second shift, we're so exhausted that coming to a Bible study, it's out of the question. We just work 12-hour day. You shouldn't have to do that. But you do, because the payments are coming in. You are a slave. Listen, that is harsh. But I didn't say that. Jesus did. This isn't Pat speaking. This is our master. We want to be apprentices to him. He's saying, guys, you can't serve me in all of this nonsense that your culture is saying that you have to have. You can't do it. Now, he is not saying you have to be rich, because actually he's speaking these words, and the Pharisees are standing over there steaming because he knows he's aiming it right in their face. Listen, here's what he's saying. Look, you can earn in the lower economic bracket. You could be down where you're not making a whole lot of money. But if you have complete, disciplined control over your finances, if your finances are not controlling you, you may not make a lot of money, but you've controlled your spending. You live within your means. You don't have debt. Then you are by far in a better place than someone who makes 10 times as much as you do, if that person is so up to their eyeballs in debt that they can't even breathe. There have been plenty of very wealthy people. I remember when I was a real estate agent, and the goal when I was a real estate agent is the bigger the house you sell, the bigger the commission. So we're all day dreaming about getting somebody that wants to buy in Paradise Valley. You know what I mean? And I actually had that happen once. I had a professional athlete got in touch with me, wanted me to go look at houses in the $1 to $2 million range. Now, from my perspective, this was a whole lot of fun, because I get to go preview those houses before I show them to my client. So I'm driving all over Paradise Valley, with my tie on, and I'm getting to see all these incredibly beautiful homes. And I even found a home that fit all of his needs. He had special needs because of his knees all messed up and everything. And he needed, this. And I found the perfect house, $1.8 million. And I'm looking at this going, the commission on this is going to feed us for 6 months. This is going to be great. And we're all the way down to showing the house and getting ready to sign paperwork and everything else. And his creditors started calling on all their debts. You see, when you're a professional athlete, you're only as good as your knees. And the reason he needed a special home is because his knees had just given out. And here he is, living the same way he was when he was still playing on the field. But now he doesn't make that much money anymore. But he's trying to keep the lifestyle up. And we could not buy the house because the Mercedes and this and that and everything else was all being called due. And I didn't get that commission. And I didn't sell that house. And not only that, the girl that he was dating at the time, she thinks I'm dating a professional athlete. Things are going to be good. We're buying a $2 million home, right? But when all of this stuff came crashing down, his relationship went belly up. Within 3 weeks, she was gone. I remember he was brokenhearted. But you know what? When you try to live above your means, even when you're a wealthy person, it's just as much slavery. Just add some zeros here and there. It's the same thing. Are you with me? Doesn't matter if you make lots of money or not a lot of money. The object is that Jesus is saying, you must take control of your finances or they will control you. And you cannot serve me the way I have in mind for you. If you are so upside down, you can't even breathe. It's not about income, guys. It's about management. And you are a manager of whatever it is that God has allowed you to have, whether it's a lot or a little, and you need to reject the lie of your culture, renew your thinking, and it says, it doesn't matter if I make this much or this much, I will not live in debt. You must make this decision as a disciple. That's what Jesus is saying, because you can't serve both. And you know what? I am now going to give you the practical side of this. Listen, God is willing to help you. He's willing to bless your efforts to get debt-free. But you've got to be willing to pursue that lifestyle. And you've got to be willing to choose the fruit of the Spirit that says self-control and patience, neither of which we like. We don't want to wait. We want the new car now, instead of putting money in an envelope for years in order to go buy it cash. We don't want to do that. Now, think about it for a second. If your monthly car payment is $300, if you were taking that $300 and putting it in an envelope, let's think about this for a second, for a couple of years, and you went out and now you have roughly, I don't know, about $7,000 cash. You could go buy a car that is actually worth $12,000 or $13,000 in all honesty, because cash is king. Anybody who's ever sold cars knows this, because I did. Somebody comes in with that green and we're going, oh, deal. You know what I mean? And we'll make a deal. I have a friend of mine who just went out and bought a car. He's been living on the envelope system for 4 years. He stuffed money in that envelope. He went out and bought a car, a $25,000 car. He got it for $18,000 cash out the door because it was cash. No interest, and he's driving away with that. It had about 8 miles on it. It blew books at $25,000. He bought it for $18,000 cash. Now, who's the smarter one? Now, God is willing to help you, but you've got to learn to live like that. You've got to learn to connect with Him in order to get the strength to be that disciplined. Here's what Elisha said. He said, well, how can I help you? What can I do for you? I mean, people go to a minister and they go, pray for me over my finances. Well, what can I do for you? You think that if I pray for you, all of a sudden, what is going to fall out of the sky for you? That's what Elisha's saying. So what does he say? Well, tell me, what do you have in your house? What has God given you already? Does that make sense? And she goes, well, your servant has nothing there at all. Well, except. We so often think we've got nothing. But what's the truth? God has provided for you, except a little oil. So Elisha says, all right, I'll tell you what. Go around, ask all your neighbors for empty jars, and don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each one is filled, put it aside. So she left him, and afterwards she shut the door behind her and her sons. She brought the jars into her, and she just kept pouring. And when all the jars were full, see, it was a miracle, right? She had a little oil, and all of a sudden she's pouring it. Now it's a lot of oil. And she said, well, bring me another one. And they said, well, there's not a jar left. And then the oil stopped flowing. So she went and told the man of God, and he said, go and sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left. Now, why did the Lord allow us to have this amazing story in His Word? Well, it's going to counter our culture, isn't it? Think about it for a second. Elisha did not say, go and pray words of faith, and it'll just come in. Some preachers tell you that, right? He did not say, go make more of a donation to the temple. He didn't say that either. He said, what's in your house? He is a man of God. I think it's not an accident that it's called in there the man of God. The man who speaks for God, the prophet. You see, this is a radical teaching. You got to work for it. And we don't like to hear that in our culture. In our culture, we want everything to just be given to us. We serve God. God loves us. God should just give us everything. No, the man of God says, what's in your house? What has God already given you? You see, the concept is that blessing comes through what you've already been given. What have you been given? What do you have? What skills, abilities, talents, opportunities? What do you have in your house? Most of us have so much junk in our garages that we can't park cars. Garages are not for cars, they're for junk. I can't even get my car in there. Sell what you have in your house. Sell everything until the kids are worried that they might be next. Sell it all. You don't need all that junk. Get rid of it. What is in your house? It's a radical teaching that we are supposed to be disciplined with the resources that God has already given us. But we have this attitude that God is somehow this genie, this pie in the sky type of thing that if you rub it the right way, if you have enough faith, if you give enough to some ministry or to some guy with a suit that speaks enough, that you're going to get a financial boost from God. Or worse, we know that being saved from our sins, that's free. Can't work for that. But somehow we've connected those two things together. We think that since salvation is free, financial blessing from God, that's free too. I assure you it is not. It is absolutely not. That is not what the Bible teaches. In fact, it says this, all hard work brings profit. It doesn't say all hard praying. It doesn't say all hard faith. It says all hard, say it, it's a four-letter word, I know it's evil. Say it with me. Work. We don't like that word. It's a four-letter word, evil. Evil's a four-letter word too, E-V-I-L, and we go work, evil. No, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk. It just leads to more poverty, guys. We got to get past this nonsense. See, the first step we talked about was budgeting last week. Budget what you have, figure out what you got to set aside for. Now, the second step is to evaluate what do you got in your house that you can start using towards getting out of debt. Now you got to act on it. That woman, she could have went, well, that's not a very good answer to my request, and done nothing. But she had to go do something. She went and got those jars from her neighbors. She went and poured the oil. It required effort. It required stepping out and saying, I'm going to be obedient in this. The miracle didn't come until she acted. See, that's what we're missing. God bless me financially. God says, go act in obedience and then I'll bless you. Go act in obedience to start getting out of debt, then I'll bless you. I have personally witnessed this in my own life. When I sat down and said, I'm going to be obedient, I'm going to get out of debt, I'm going to pay it off. And when I looked at how long it was going to take to pay it all off, it just seems endless and forever. But as soon as I started stepping into it, God started blessing me, and it got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Because, ooh, this came, and ooh, that came, and somebody gave me this gift, and an extra job came in, or whatever it happens to be. Because God blesses you when you obey Him. This is so vital to us as disciples. Look, this is so important. He's saying, God wants you to evaluate what He's already given you and work diligently on a battle plan to pay off your debts, and He's going to bless your efforts. Now, what I want to do, it says poured oil in her jars. In other words, she followed a plan, and God blessed that plan. Listen, and it was a good plan. I'm going to show you a video clip right now about a plan you should follow.
Once you've got $1,000 in your starter emergency fund, now it's time to get rid of your debt. The way we attack the debt, we call it the debt snowball. This will take a truckload of effort. You got to get intense. Personal finance is 80% behavior. It's only 20% head knowledge. The debt snowball is designed to modify your behavior with money. Being a certified nerd, I used to start with making the math work. I've learned that the math does not need to work as much as you got to have the motivation. Motivation's more important than math. This is one of those times. In the debt snowball method, what you do is you list all your debts, smallest to largest. You pay minimum payments on everything but the little one, and you attack the little one with a vengeance. This is the way you got to do it. Hey, listen, even those loans from mom and dad or medical debts that have zero interest, I don't care if there's any interest. You got to get out of debt. And what we're going to do is knock out the smallest one. Because when you knock out that smallest one, you have this sense of, hey, I won. I knocked it out. I'm killing it. And that's what you got to have. You got to get fired up. And so when you knock off the little one, it's kind of like going on a diet and losing weight. So again, with the debt snowball, what we're going to do is we're going to list the debts, smallest to largest, regardless of interest rate, squeeze every dollar out of your budget. You're not saving money anywhere, and you just attack on that smallest debt. When that smallest debt is gone, then you take all the money you can find from anywhere else in your budget, including the payment you used to pay on number one. The snowball rolls over again. It picks up more snow, and you attack number two. And you just go right down the list like that. Now, why don't we go highest interest rate to smallest interest rate, Dave? That'd be mathematically correct. Darling, if we were doing math, you wouldn't have credit card debt.
Amen.
So think. This is modifying behavior. This is about the deal where you absolutely have to control and modify your behavior. That's the deal. You got to get fired up. And when you get the first one, you'll get excited. When you knock off the second one, you get a little bit more excited. By the time you've knocked off 4 or 5, you're going to get so intense, you're going to have such blinders on that you're going to have the emotional passion to change your family tree. This stuff works. Pay off everything but your house in baby step 2 using the debt snowball.
Now, I know a couple from this church. They no longer come to this church because they got a job and had to move out of state. I have their permission to tell their story. 5 years ago, they went to the Financial Peace University, which we are offering again in January. Notice how he said that this is behavior modification. Disciples cannot be slaves to their finances, or else they will never be able to truly serve God the way He wants you to. They understood this. They understood that they had $40,000 in just unsecured credit debt. 40 grand. That's a lot of money. But they took this 5 years ago, and just last year, they called me up. I still remember getting the call because it was early in the morning. I don't know why they're calling me at 5:45. But I went, who is it? And I put it up, and they're going, we're debt-free. And I'm going, good for you. I'm going back to bed. But anyway, the thing is, they're excited. They paid off every penny. Oh, and it got better. Because now all the money that they were spending on debt, they now poured into buying a home. And when they went and bought this home, which I'm looking forward to staying in when we go out to visit them this next year. When they went and bought this home, they put so much money down that their payments are so low, he can literally triple his payments on that house. So instead of a 30-year mortgage, he was telling me on the phone, we're going to pay this thing off 7 years. 7. And he's not even 50 yet. But he started out $40,000 in the hole. But when he got a hold of this, and he was telling me on the phone that it feels so good to go to church and be able to write a check, and it doesn't even cross my mind. It's not going to bounce. Of course it's not. I got lots of money. He doesn't make huge money. He's not a rich man. But you know what? He's disciplined. It's behavior modification. Are we disciples or not? If we are, then we have to, and this is the review, there is no such thing as good debt. You own that truth. All debt is bad debt, and as disciples, we need to work hard to live a debt-free lifestyle. That's what we do. So we're going to walk out of this room and say, no, I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. I don't live in debt. I'm not a slave to a credit card company or a bank. I'm a slave to the living God. I serve Him and Him alone. My finances serve me, starting now. That's what we choose. No more debt. And if you want to know how to get out of debt, remember the word debt. D is determine your needs. Make sure you're on that budget. The E, evaluate what is in your house. What has God already given you? So you're starting with the budget. I am planning everything. I mean, Melissa and I, if I could pick on you, yesterday she ran out and baby's a garage sale girl. That's garage sales. So she's out there and she's forgot to bring the Christmas envelope with her. So she's pulling money to buy this cool stuff for Christmas out of the grocery envelope because that's the one she had in the purse. So she phones me up, and to her credit, she goes, all right, I gotta pull the money out of the Christmas envelope and put it back in the grocery envelope in order to keep things balanced. Now, normally you wouldn't do that. You go, oh, well, whatever. No, she's disciplined. That's what a disciple does. So I remember he was coming home, and we're trying to break a 10. Nobody had 2 5s because we're trying to get exactly back in the grocery envelope what we robbed from it for Christmas. Why? Because we're going to be self-disciplined, self-control. We will be patient. We will live within our means because we're disciples. So we determine what our needs are. We evaluate what's in our house. And then we come up with that battle plan. You follow that debt snowball. You get it going. Now you got to get motivated. You got to go work with others. We connect in our small groups and we're going, hey, I knocked off another one this month. Yeah, everybody cheers for you. And we keep going until we rule our finances instead of them ruling us. And you know what you do at the end? You got to trust God in your prayer and your discipleship. He'll bless you, and he'll help you to stick with the plan, but you got to step out. So many people say, God, give me the strength, and I'll obey. God says, obey, and I'll give you the strength. Now, this was not one of those types of messages that, terribly exciting. I'm talking about debt. But I'll tell you what is exciting, because I've felt it. That day you find yourself debt-free, there is nothing quite like that feeling. I've been there, and it feels really good. And you're going, wow, I can breathe. You know what I mean? You just feel different. That is exciting, and I want all of you to be able to experience it. I want all of you to be able to live like that. I want all of you to be able to do that so that you can do the things God calls you to do. When a short-term missions trip to Haiti next year comes up, you're going, yeah, I can do that. I'll set aside in an envelope here $100 a month until I get everything done. But I can set that money aside because I'm not so tied up in debt. I can go on that short-term trip. Right? I can go and, the church is going to go do something. There's a ministry here that takes girls that are prostitutes off the street and gives them a place to live and cleans them up. We're going to go down there and we're going to bless them. We're going to paint their buildings. We're going to do something like that. And you can, because you're not so dreadfully tired because you're working 90 hours a week in order to keep the debt up. No, you're not there. You work a reasonable shift and you can do that. Are you with me? That's what God wants. But it reminds me of something. Why does God not just bless us? Listen carefully. Why is it that we as Christians can't just get down on our knees and pray and bang, we get everything paid for instantaneously? I think I know. It's the same reason that when we work hard, we get thorns and thistles. It's the same reason that even Christian women have to go through labor. It reminds us of something. If you have to work your little rear end off in order to get out of debt and stay out, you know what it does? It reminds you of a debt you could never pay. Every single one of us has offended the living God. We are all liars because we told lies. We're all thieves because we've stolen something down the line. We are all adulterers in our hearts because of our thoughts. We have offended God, and it is a debt that no debt snowball could ever pay. And as you're going through this, as you're working through this, as you're paying those bills, I want you to think it through as a disciple and go, I'm paying this, and it reminds me that my debt that I could never pay was paid for me. It should bring you to a deeper level. We talked about discipleship is going to a deeper level. Don't just pay off your debts. Understand as you go through it who paid yours. You are on a one-way trip to hell. But Jesus died on the cross to pay a debt you could never, ever pay. Ever. And when you're going through this, it should help you love Jesus at an even deeper level. Because you're going, wow, I'm working this hard to pay off a credit card company. How hard was it for you to go to the cross for me? How hard was it for you to be up there with your blood pouring down and the pain beyond anything I could ever even comprehend, to know you're doing it for me? And that should motivate you to get at a dad even more, because your master says, don't be ruled by your finances. If I'm willing to go to the cross for you, then you should be willing to do whatever it takes to not be ruled by this, but be ruled by me. Now that's discipleship. That's going to a deeper level. Let's pray.